we've all seen good examples and we've seen some not so great examples, in the workplace, whether in the business world, the military, wherever. What are some traits excuse me, that you believe are ones that you want to pick up that are good traits? Or maybe one that you feel like you want to try to avoid that trait so you don't end up being a leader that people don't want to go to?
Man, I would have to start with honesty.
Mm,
You've ever had that time in your career, whether it's military, civilian life, that you don't know what to do and you just need an honest answer? And the one thing I cannot stand is when a leader only gives you like the corporate vision or what you should do and doesn't give you true honesty and just answer your question. As a leader, I think you have to be honest no matter what you believe, whether it's what corporate says, what you think, what a previous mentor says, like just say the answer. Like have the difficult conversation. Because without honesty, we just turn into a lot of little corporate or career driven robots that can't really make real decisions or have real conversations. So I would say honesty to start with that. And for things I wouldn't want to pick up, man, for me, it's risk aversion. Like
mm,
I've met too many bosses nowadays or peers where they could make a change and it could be better. But if there is a singular risk that could go wrong, they don't. And I think we have to take the time to understand these aren't the days of the test pilot. This isn't the 1950s space program. This is not a life or death situation at war. This is, oh, we were a little slower. Or, oh, my computer got busted. Or, oh, like, I miscommunicated. I think we have to be okay with taking risks, especially now when the stakes aren't super high, for the fact that down the road, these negative behaviors can lead to major losses, whether it is the finances of an organization, the retention of the people in a company, or eventually, like, life or death matters, and we just can't get to that point. Like, that's not when we have to practice whether we want to approach a risk in one way or another. So for me, like, if you're a risk averse leader, take a look in the mirror and really just try to understand like why you're that way and how you can take action to start to push boundaries and really take chances and learn from those mistakes. What do you think,
absolutely.
man? Like what are the things that you want in a boss or in a leader and
Oh
things that
man.
you just can't stand?
Oh man. So I have to start with accountability. Like, let's just start there. I feel like there can't be any progression. There can't be any growth, any culture change, any true change without accountability. Leaders that I've had in the past that I wanted to be like, leaders that I've seen that, man, I go, man, I want them to be my mentor. Ones that I just look up to were people that they weren't just telling us what to do, like they were actually living out that lifestyle. They were actually putting in the work, and we could visibly see the work. And in that accountability, there was still grace there. There was still this sense of like, hey, I can still be human. Like they understood that, hey, I got to tell you that, okay, you got A and B right, but you messed up C. So there was that level of accountability, but I could tell that they weren't just giving me that accountability, just trying to make me look bad. They were doing it because they wanted the best for me. Right. So accountability is definitely one. And for me, the other one, in the regards of a character trait that I think that leaders miss out on is being a good listener. Being a good listener, not assuming what I'm going to say or what I'm trying to say, but actually hearing me out. There's nothing worse than sitting down with a leader or someone that's over you or has a particular role or position. You sit down with them. You've spent probably all day, all night thinking about the thing that you want to say. You finally have the words and the confidence to say it to them. You still feel shaky. You sit down for, 15, 20 minutes talking to them just for them to comment and respond back as if they never heard you in the first place, right? Like they heard you talk for 10 minutes and they got hung up with one detail, that something that was super minor, that wasn't even the big picture of why you were talking to them. And now you just feel like they don't get it. Like they don't understand me. Right. And so being a good listener for me is super, super important as a leader, but also that accountability piece, because again, how can you expect me to work at a certain level or hit certain milestones and goals, but we don't see that same level of tenacity, that same level of excellence from you. So for me, those are the traits that I pick.
I love that. And what's fascinating is some of the things we're saying relate just to an inherent ability to take the time and learn. Whether it's listening to others, whether it's making mistakes, whether it is taking the time to point out what's wrong and how it can get better. Having that learning mindset is so critical that a good leader is really just a lifelong learner. They eventually apply what they learn, they teach others, and they continue over and over. But now moving to the negative, man, like what are the things you're not looking for in your leaders?
Man, I think you actually started touching on it a little bit when you talked about being a leader that learns. I think leaders are prevented from doing that when they are closed-minded. And that's the trait is when you're closed-minded, when you're stubborn, when your pride and your ego gets in the way. I think that's a trait that we have to be careful of, no matter who we're leading, regardless if you're someone in corporate America, in the military, in the education system, in law enforcement. Whenever you get to a place where you don't want to listen to people anymore, you don't want to learn, you don't want to, just hop on Google or YouTube and just do a search on a particular topic, read an article and like thoroughly go through it, not just grabbing statistics that like buffer how you already feel about it, but actually trying to learn, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Like be uncomfortable for a moment, just being the rookie. Cause that's really what it is. It's sometimes when you finally hit that place, when you're finally in leadership, when you finally get that rank, when you finally get that like position and you get a little bit of power, a little bit of responsibility, sometimes it can go to your head because you know what worked, like what got you there. But you said it, you always have to be in a mode of learning. Like the best leaders that I've seen or been around, they were always learning. They always had their head in a book. They were always checking out a podcast. They were always like in a seminar and a conference, or they were just surrounded by really cool people, or people that like push them, right? You always hear the saying of like, hey, if you're always the smartest person in the room, then you need to change rooms. Right. And so like it's one of those things. So for me, it's being stubborn and it's being closed-minded. I think that can stop not only your personal progression, but it can stop the progression of things happening in your organization and your office. Because if people in your office don't think that you listen and that you're stubborn, they're going to stop giving feedback. They're going to stop giving input. They're going to stop coming up with those innovative ideas to fix problems. So for me, that being stubborn and that being just like hard-headed mentality is something that I think leaders need to be careful for. What for you on the bad side? What do you think?
Besides being risk averse, man, leaders who choose not to make decisions that highlight the negative in their organization. What I mean by that is, yes, the boss has to bring the good news, but sometimes the boss has to bring the bad news. And it is
True.
I believe, a lack of ownership when you're leading your organization, whether you're the president of a company, you're just a supervisor of a small team, whatever it might be. If the bad news is always coming from someone else because you send them as your conduit, you're not taking ownership. You have to be comfortable giving bad news, whether that is a mistake, negative feedback, or what it might be. Leaders who choose not to do that and avoid those difficult conversations and avoid the negative, I don't think ever truly accept the repercussions of their decisions. And so I think as a leader, you just gotta be okay with being uncomfortable and saying those bad things.
Absolutely. For anyone out there that's watching this video, let us know. There are tons of traits out there that are there for good leaders, and there are traits by bad leaders. What are traits that you have seen in your workplace? Throw it in the comment section.